Hope you're doing well. Happy New Year, obviously. And this is the Best Films of 2018 list. So, I've done 16 this year, because, I mean, there are no rules to this fucking thing, and I can do whatever the fuck I want. But mostly from 16 to 10, they're basically interchangeable. So depending on my mood, depending on the day, any one of them could have been there at number 10, and I didn't want to exclude these other films that I felt were really fantastic, and I just didn't want to leave out. I just wanted to talk about them because I like celebrating wonderful movies. So let's just get into it. Alright, so number 16 is Hereditary, directed by Ari Aster, which is a first film by this director, and I just thought it was wonderful in terms of its directing, in terms of its thematic elements, in terms of its acting. I thought it was creepy, has a completely merited bonkers ending, which I found absolutely wonderful, very reminiscent of things like Rosemary's Baby and the likes. It's a film about destiny, it's a film about family, in many respects. It's got a lot of similarities, I find, with Yorgos Lanthimos' The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It actually feels like something out of Greek mythology, but with Yorgos Lanthimos films, I found it pretty annoying. I felt like the director was behind me the whole time, like poking me, saying, "Hey, dude, I like Kubrick. I hope you like Kubrick." And I'm like, yeah, I like Kubrick, but you know, you don't need to keep reminding me that you like Kubrick. So I felt like this one was fresher. I felt like this one, the director actually took more of a back seat, and it almost unfolded less like a horror film and more like a family drama, but then with some really fucked up horror in there, and I really felt that it worked really, really well. So there you have it, number 16, Hereditary by Ari Aster. Number 15 is Mission Impossible Fallout, directed by Christopher McQuarrie. I mean, at a certain point, these aren't even movies anymore, they're just Tom Cruise and his buddies going to remote locations, doing some insane stunts, and I'm totally on board with that. Maybe the fact that this is a continuation of the previous film with the same director, I feel it loses maybe a little bit of the freshness. I don't think it ever captures the height of Ghost Protocol. For me, that's still my favorite Mission Impossible, but it's still just a wonderful time in the theater. It looks great in IMAX, you know, insane Halo jumps and great fight scenes and Tom Cruise hanging from helicopters. And I mean, at this point, if you're not fully on board the Tom Cruise train, I pity you. You're just not a good person. You're an infidel, and you just will not be hanging out on Elrond's spaceship at the end when all this is over. So I pity you. I'm sorry. Number 14 is Custody, directed by Xavier Legrand. Really powerful film about domestic violence, told essentially from the point of view of the young kid that is at the center of this custody battle. It starts off in a really procedural way, and as it moves on, it gradually turns into more and more of a thriller. It's like a fucked up Kramer versus Kramer. The two main actors are fantastic. Denis Ménochet has this really hulking, menacing presence, but also like he's got this teddy bear quality about him, and when he decides to seem kinder, when he decides to toy with his victim, he kind of becomes almost believable. You almost believe that he's gonna change. And Léa Drucker on the other side plays it as both this extremely strong woman, but also extremely vulnerable. And yeah, first film by Xavier Legrand, first feature film by Xavier Legrand, because this is actually a sequel to a short film that he made, which has all of the same actors and all of the same characters, and yeah, just a really good film that deserves to be on your radar. Number 13 is The Writer by Chloe Zhao. Brady, the main character, has undergone surgery. He's got this horrible head trauma that he got during a rodeo accident. Rodeo is his passion. It's his life, it's what he does, he's a cowboy, and now because of this, he can't practice the thing that he loves, and he has to not only give up that thing that he loves, but in a way, he has to completely redefine himself as a cowboy, as a person, as a man. It is just an extremely powerful, very beautiful, quiet film, full of empathy and very, very delicate. It's Chloe Zhao's second film, I believe, and it's just an incredible hybrid between documentary and fiction. The main character, like I said, is really named Brady. He really underwent this horrific accident. I mean, he's, you know, playing himself, essentially, and playing out his real life and his real life trauma, and it's just a wonderful film by Chloe Zhao. Number 13, The Rider. Number 12 is Three Faces by Jafar Panahi, a man who with nothing makes absolute gold. If you don't know, Jafar Panahi is technically forbidden by the Iranian government from making films, and yet he still makes fucking films, and this guy's amazing. It's got this whole meta aspect where he plays himself, and this young girl sends him a text message because her family doesn't want her to become an actress, to move to Tehran and go to acting school because she's from this extremely rural part of Iran. And so they go over there to see if it's a hoax or to see if she really killed herself. It's just a great movie by one of the world's great filmmakers. Just a great film by a great director who just puts all of us to shame, really, because nobody's, you know, forbidding us from making films, and yet we're not doing things half as good as he is. So, and half as being supremely generous. Wonderful, wonderful director, wonderful film. Number 12, Three Faces, Jafar Panahi. Okay, number 11, Sorry to Bother You by Boots Riley. I talked about this a little bit in the previous video. I just, you know, rented this on iTunes and just thought it was fantastically funny and quirky and weird and fucked up. And yeah, really curious to see what Boots Riley has in store for us next. Just this crazy story that starts off as Office Space and finishes as the Island of Dr. Moreau, but with like almost a socialist message, or at least very anti-capitalist. Lakeith Stanfield is great. Steven Yeun, who I'm gonna talk about in an upcoming film on the list as well, is wonderful. Tessa Thompson's wonderful. It's just really, really, really great first film. A lot of first films actually in this sort of first part of my list, which is interesting. It means there's a lot of up-and-coming talented directors that I'm really looking forward to, and that are going to have lots and lots of films for us to enjoy. So number 10 is Burning by Lee Chang-dong, again with Steven Yeun. Lee Chang-dong is a Korean director. I haven't seen any of his previous films, but now I really want to go back and see more of his stuff because Burning is just absolutely beautiful. Again, it's one of those films that starts off as one thing and then finishes as something else. As the movie progresses, it kind of goes from this two guys and a girl, both into the same girl, kind of almost romantic drama, and then it becomes a thriller, but it's almost only a thriller in the main character's head, which is super interesting. And it's again kind of a film about, I guess, fragile masculinity, but it's really powerful. 2.5 hours long, and you don't feel anything. Steven Yeun as this yuppie, wealthy guy who is really well traveled but gets bored and just has a new girlfriend every 6 months is absolutely fantastic. Really, really interested in seeing him in Jordan Peele's film, which I guess is going to be coming out next year. But yeah, Burning, really just check it out. Fantastic film from Korea, and that's my number 10. Oh, number 9, we're getting controversial. It is Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built, a film that is loved by many, loathed by even more people. Yeah, I just found it to be hilariously funny, wonderful experience seeing it in the theater, just super, super dark, but at the same time, it's like this grand farce that I don't think people should be taking too seriously. And yet it's also weirdly autobiographical in a way that's delightfully fucked up. And, you know, literally ends in the 9th circle of hell. So I don't know what to say more than, you know, The House That Jack Built. I really liked it, thought it was really funny. And Matt Dillon, I mean, we haven't seen him in a while, and he's fantastic in this. So yay for serial killers. Number 8 is David Robert Mitchell's Under the Silver Lake. Again, a film that was really poorly received on the festival circuit, apparently, at least at Cannes. And I don't even know if this is out yet. I think this played a lot of festivals, but they pushed back the release. It was supposed to be released in August. And now I think it's coming out early next year in a truncated form. I think it's going to be edited down. The version that I saw was the Cannes version. I saw it at Fantasia, and I loved it. Again, I thought it was just quirky and funny and strange and really almost autobiographical about a guy who's navigating through LA and finds that the city is just incredibly fucked up. And at the same time that we live in a world that's totally devoid of mystery. It's got this really interesting portion about how we view pop culture and how we infuse that into our own lives in a way that's kind of self-destructive. Probably one of my favorite performances by Andrew Garfield. And yeah, just a weird sort of noirish homage to films like from the 40s and 50s, but at the same time, incredibly modern. And yeah, this is from the guy that did It Follows, but I probably like this even more than It Follows. So Under the Silver Lake is my number 8. Number 7 is The Death of Stalin by Armando Iannucci, probably the best Monty Python film not made by the Monty Python. It is essentially the story, loosely adapted, obviously, because it's an adaptation from a French comic book about the death of Stalin and the upcoming power struggle that ensued. It's this grand farce with these incredibly funny actors, incredibly funny and well-written dialogue, and at the same time, horribly, horribly dark. I mean, the villain of the film is, you know, a pedophile and a torturer, and yet at the same time, he's incredibly funny. Armando Iannucci really knocks it out of the park again, and probably the funniest movie about mass genocide that we've seen all year, so that's good. Number 6 is First Reformed by Paul Schrader, starring Ethan Hawke, who delivers a career-best performance. First Reformed is just this beautiful, slow, meditative movie about a priest who becomes overrun with despair at how we're treating our planet and how the church is just not responding to global warming and pollution, and basically takes it on and becomes completely obsessed with it to the point of absolute mania. It has just some of the most powerful sequences and moments that channel both Bresson and Ozu, and maybe a lot of Carl Theodor Dreyer in there. It's just an incredible film by Paul Schrader, who honestly, I didn't think he had this in him anymore. I mean, The Canyons was absolute garbage. And I mean, it had been a long time since Schrader had been making anything that was worthwhile. I mean, you know, maybe the last interesting project he worked on was Bringing Out the Dead, that was directed by Scorsese in the late 90s. So yeah, I mean, just completely out of left field, Paul Schrader makes a fantastic, fantastic film that is drop-dead gorgeous and that I absolutely loved. Number 5 is Shoplifters by Hirokazu Koreeda, which is this year's Palme d'Or. Just a beautiful, humanist story about family, about this young girl being essentially kidnapped, but more than that, adopted by the surrogate family who don't have much, who shoplift to get by, none of them are related to one another, but they create this new family unit in a Japan that is increasingly individualist and really just is marred by social and economic problems. All this through the lens of Koreeda, who's really one of the great filmmakers working today. Beautiful, touching story, wonderful performance by the central characters, thoroughly deserved Palme d'Or. Just a beautiful, beautiful film that I can't recommend enough. Shoplifters is in at number 5. Number 4 is Wes Anderson's second foray into animation, into stop-motion animation, and that is Isle of Dogs. Just incredibly touching and beautiful and funny. The animation is just sublime. I just said earlier that the funniest film about mass genocide was The Death of Stalin, but actually, this is a kid's film that touches on genocide and the migration problem and the way we treat the other. And it's just incredibly powerful and beautiful. And yeah, Wes Anderson, I mean, he's a great filmmaker, we know this, but I feel like animation just really gets the best out of him because of the way he makes his films. It just makes sense. I mean, he's like a really anal guy that loves to have control, and he gets to control literally every frame, and it's just a perfect animated movie, and I loved it. Number 4, Isle of Dogs. Alright, number 3, the bronze medal goes to Damien Chazelle for First Man, the film about Neil Armstrong that focuses on about 10 years of his life, basically from when he joins, well, actually, just before he joins the Apollo program and when his daughter dies, up until he sets foot on the moon, and it's beautifully shot by his cinematographer Linus Singgraven, I think is his name, in 16mm, 35mm, and IMAX. Beautiful use of the theremin by his composer Justin Hurwitz, and a really mature film about a man who's like already gone. He's already in space, so he might as well take the next step. Great performance by Gosling, who, I mean, he's kind of made to play these sorts of roles where he doesn't have to emote that much. He can kind of close off emotionally, but he does it super well. And yeah, I'm just progressively more and more enthused by Chazelle as a director. I mean, Whiplash, you can see the talent, but I think it's kind of an immature film and has kind of a weird worldview. Then La La Land, actually very nicely surprised by it. Really hate the opening sequence that everybody talks about, but then as the movie goes on, I'm actually very much engaged with these two central characters, and again, you can see the talent the director has, but this one's just a lot less showy, a lot more mature, like I already said, and yeah, just a wonderful homage as well to the hundreds of thousands of people that made the greatest accomplishment of the 20th century possible. So number 3 is Damien Chazelle's First Man. And number two is Loveless by Russian director Andrei Zvyagintsev. Incredible film about these two parents who are going through a divorce, and they have a kid, and they really don't like their child very much. He's basically a problem for them, and they're essentially fighting not to keep custody. All of a sudden, the kid goes missing. They don't know if he's been kidnapped or if he's just running away, but they kind of have to band together to try and find him. In a way, they don't really seem like they want to find him, but it would seem weird to the police, to their community, to their family if they weren't out there looking for him. And just a really dark but also very emotionally resonant film about parents, about modern day Russia, and this incredible, despicable, horrible feeling towards the end that despite everything that happened, these people, they've learned nothing and they haven't changed a bit. It's an incredibly beautiful film, extremely powerful by, again, wonderful director Andrei Zvyagintsev. I highly recommend you check out all of his films, especially his first film, The Return, which I think is just an amazing first film. But Loveless is probably better, in my opinion. Just an incredibly powerful film. Number 2 is Loveless by Andrei Zvyagintsev. And finally, number one. Number 1 is a film I talked about very recently because it's the last review of the year. And I was lucky to see it in a theater because I know most people will see it on their television, but this deserves the full-on theatrical experience with the Atmos sound. It is Alfonso Cuarón's, dare I say, masterpiece, Roma. Beautiful film. Every single moment of this film I would just want to freeze, frame, and put up on my wall. It's that beautiful, and at the same time, it's still incredibly powerful emotionally, told from the memories of Cuarón as a kid, but through the eyes, if you will, of his made of his house servant, who's just this incredibly powerful character called Cleo, and a realization by two women that they're better off together than with men, because men kind of suck in this film. But yeah, just I mean, I don't even know what to say about it anymore because I've already done a video. I'll link it up here if you want. Netflix, really a big player in the game now, I guess, because they're producing both terrible movies and at the same time one of the best films of the year. My favorite film of the year, certainly. And yeah, I mean, Alfonso Cuarón's return to directing after Gravity. It was nice to see him do something so small and personal after Gravity, but at the same time, what's really quite fascinating is that it's small and personal, but there's like a ton of extras and it has this kind of grand scope. So this small personal film actually feels really large and is told in a really large way. Whereas Gravity, which was this huge action film, only had 2 characters, so I guess he is a director of contrasts in that way, but I mean, I like all his films. I think he's a wonderful director, certainly of the golden Mexican generation, you might say, that works in the US. Cuarón, Del Toro, and Iñárritu. Cuarón is certainly my favorite, actually, by far. And yeah, just I don't know what to say. Again, you know, when films are this good, just there's not that much to say anymore. You just gotta watch them and take it in and fall in love with films all over again. So there you have it. Those are my favorite films of the year, and just hoping that 2019 is going to be just as good, if not better. I'm sure it'll be wonderful. I mean, every year is good for movies if you know where to look. And yeah, so here's to another year of cinema, and yeah, until next time, see ya.